value and how it can be useful to you. So I like to bring Kris in. And Kris, thank you so much for joining with us today. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk a little bit about aromatherapy and your journey and how you really kind of got to helping people with this. But before we kind of get too fancy too quick, because we got to make sure that, we don't go too far off. Can you help break it down for me? Exactly what is aromatherapy?
So, aromatherapy is just simply the use of scent to have an impact therapeutically in the body. And right now, most of what we use is essential oils, which are typically distilled from plant material. There are a couple of other processes that are used in aromatherapy and essential oils, but are less common. Cold press from the citruses. And then there's also a chemical extraction, but we don't necessarily need to get into that. So most of the time, it's just they just use plant material. They use the leaves, the flowers, the seeds, the bark of different various plants, trees, and then steam distill those oils and extract those oils for use therapeutically in human and animal kind. So I absolutely love working with them. It's such a stimulating and relaxing experience at the same time. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Okay. So to that end, I'm sure I'm not sure. You know what? Let me take a step back. But I'm going to maybe take a guess and say at 5 years old, I'm gathering you can say, you know what? I want to deal with aromatherapy and helping people. How did you come to considering utilizing aromatherapy for the benefits? And how did it come to you that, hey, this is valuable. I really want to expose people to doing this the right way.
So when I took my massage therapy training, I went to the Center for Vital Living in Fort Wayne, and actually one of the clinicians there was a clinical aromatherapist, and I didn't think a whole lot about that at the time. I was learning so much information, becoming a massage therapist, that I didn't really. I just noticed that whenever I used her room, it smelled really good. That was about it. But during that time, my car got broken into when I was at school. And Emily came out and said, let me give you some peppermint oil to take home with you while you navigate all this, because it really helps with the feeling of being violated. And I thought, okay, whatever, I mean, I like peppermint, sure. And so, I have this little tissue with peppermint oil on it, and I'm driving 2 hours home. Of course, I'm kind of flipping out because, my car got broken into. But I'll tell you, by the time I got home, I felt pretty good. And so that seed was planted in me. And then as my practice developed, and it took a few years for me to really start playing with a few essential oils in session, and of course, mostly topically, and really just more intuitively. I didn't even really know what I was doing. I was just attracted to certain scents and would sort of put a few drops in and see what happened with the clients. And a lot of times I would notice that if I put a few drops of essential oils into the carrier, all of a sudden that person's body, their skin is drawing that oil in. So the oil that was on their body before without the essential oil was kind of lingering on the skin, but then the essential oil, it was like their body wanted it and started pulling it in. So I just sort of started dabbling, learning like one oil at a time kind of thing. And then about 6 years ago, I decided to kind of get serious about it. I had been retailing some of the essential oils at Ray of Light, and just felt like I needed to know more about things before, as I was growing that part of my business. And so I started a program and became a clinical aromatherapist. It took me 5 years.
Okay. So you mentioned Ray of Light, which is your sort of beacon to really being able to provide health to a number of individuals, and particularly in our area in Michiana, just to kind of reference that, that's Ray of Light Holistic Health. And if I recall correctly, this is the address and phone number where you can be reached. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so, in talking about aromatherapy, prior to that, you mentioned the aspect of massage, and I want to say those are kind of a couple of your services, but you have a few other things that you guys offer too, do you not?
Yes. So we have a holistic health center. We offer acupuncture, various types of massage therapy. We have multiple therapists that all work here together. We do have a far infrared sauna, which is excellent for detoxification and stimulating immunity. And then we do personalized aromatherapy. So even though we have a whole brand of essential oils and all things aromatherapy, I do personal consultations. So I meet with people either through Zoom or in person, and kind of, especially if they have a health issue, if they're on multiple types of medication, it's best to work with somebody that's got a little bit more experience so that you're not, putting yourself in danger. And then we also have yoga classes. So, and our yoga teacher actually uses some essential oils in her classes as well, if everybody's okay with that. So yeah, it is definitely a holistic health center.
How did you originally come up with the name Ray of Light? What prompted you to push to say, you know what? This is a need here in Michiana, and I want to be the person that really helps provide that need.
Well, not very many people know the true story behind the name, so it's funny that you asked that. So when I was in college, I became a huge Madonna fan, and her album "Ray of Light" was her. Yes, exactly. I was definitely voguing a lot. But the album Ray of Light was her sort of spiritual evolution album. And being raised Catholic like she was, I very much connected with that album and the songs on there, the music on there. It was very evolutionary for me personally. And so when the vision and mission of Ray of Light kind of came to me through this healing experience I had in Arizona, I knew that that had to be the name. And then, of course, just the concept of rays of light coming in from darkness, giving people a sense of hope. And when people ask me what we do here, if I have to boil it all down, that is what I say, is that we give people hope.
I think that's a huge thing, particularly for our paying populace, and making sure that they know that there are options out there and they're not alone. It sounds simple, but it's a huge factor in people really finding not only themselves, but finding ways to be able to get back to doing the things that they really love to be able to do. So I really appreciate that story. So
Okay, I want to tell a story about that really quick. Can I do that?
I'm
Can I
quiet. I'm already off the screen. Go ahead. Tell the story.
Okay, good. So in terms of in line with that whole hope concept, so one of our colleagues, Kathy Bell, had referred a client to me. This man, I was still in school. So I was doing like case study work. I really did not feel like I was ready to actually work with the public yet. And this man had level 8 migraines every day for 5 years. And he had been going through some of the treatments that he was telling me he had been through, I had never even heard of. I had to research them. I couldn't believe the level of pain that this man was bearing every day. And here he sits in my treatment room, and I'm like, what do I have to give this guy? I mean, he's been to all these physicians all over the country, and he has spent weeks in health centers where they're injecting him with different things. I mean, it was crazy. So he's sitting in my room, and I come up with this three oil blend, very simple blend, oils that are very easily obtained. And I put a few drops of this blend on this tissue. And I said, I'm going to leave you in this quiet room for a few minutes. Just take some nice deep in breaths with this oil, and we'll see how you feel. And so I went out of the room, and I'm blending up a bigger bottle because I'm hoping that this is the thing for him. And I come back, and here he sits with his tissue, and he opens one eye, and he's like, girl, I think you're onto something. Because in 5 minutes, his pain came down to a 3. So And his doctors loved it. He continued to use that blend. He still calls us periodically to get a big, he gets big, huge bottles of it at a time so that he can use it all over his body. So it doesn't take his pain 100% away. But if I can help a person take their pain from an 8 to a 3 in 5 minutes with them just smelling some oils, I mean, that's like miraculous.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
it's huge. And particularly one of the upsides to this is that it's a natural piece. We're not talking about using an opioid type treatment option that then has people concerned with addiction and whether they're not going to be themselves. And to be able to provide something that can give them that type of relief without having a dependency associated with it is a huge part.
Mhm.
So let's kind of drive to the components of what's your why for what motivates the elements of you doing aromatherapy, right? Because I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who can be able to give you explanations. And I talked to Kris before about, well, we can go into the science behind it and this and that. But I think when patients come to someone and they're looking for help, one of the things that they really seem to ask me fairly frequently, and I think other providers as well, is if you're doing this, I need to understand, are you doing it just because you have to, or is there a deeper reason for why you feel like this is, your calling? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in terms of, my evolution as a healer, I started as a massage therapist, have added the aromatherapy piece. I've worked with energy work for years, and am now a student of acupuncture. And of course, my staff are always like, "Why are you constantly in?" My husband is like, "Why are you constantly in school?" Because it's incredible to me. It is such an incredible gift of my life to wake up every day, come into my clinic, and hold space for other humans to figure themselves out, to heal themselves. This using essential oils and aromatherapy, people, it's a very visceral response. People smell lemon. So even those of you watching who don't have lemon anywhere near you, you can close your eyes, you can take a deep breath and imagine cutting a lemon in half, and most of you are going to start to experience a little bit of salivation because your brain remembers the smell of lemon very powerfully. And impacting the brain the way that essential oils can is incredibly powerful and yet natural at the same time. So, it feels very much in line with the way, that I prefer to live, which is more naturally and in conjunction with nature. It's really astonishing to me how many years aromatherapy and essential oils have been used and how it's been used in different settings all over the world. I feel like America is just barely starting to wake up to some of that. So I'm excited to see how that will evolve and develop. And some of that just has to do with people choosing to use them and use them safely and wisely.
Okay. So Kris told me, yeah, she was like, you know what? Key down the science a little bit. Don't get too crazy with it. But for me being a doc, I want to make sure people know this is not fluff. There's science behind aromatherapy, and that there have been a number of studies. And I was like, you know what? I need to look this up. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to PubMed. And I'm going to look up and see are there studies. And you can see that there are studies that are out there that show statistically significant differences compared to placebo. And so, what that means in kind of like fancy terms put into layman's language is that there's science behind this, and there's a number of things that look at the elements of how does your nose and your scent connect to your sense of smell, connect to your brain, that then influences your nervous system in ways that we don't normally think about. And I'll be frank with you. If you talked to me maybe 3, 4, 5 years or so ago, I'm not so sure I would have been as open as a doc, which then probably did a disservice to my patients to say, yeah, I don't know if there's any value. And so the reason why I bring this to the forward to have a discussion about it is I'm sure there are patients and people that are out there that are like, I really value my doctor's opinion, and they didn't say that they really believed in it. But the problem is they might not have really done any research about it. So kind of passing this off to you, Kris, how frequently do you have a few skeptics that are just like, I'm not so sure this is going to be a fit because my doctor or a healthcare provider or my nurse practitioner or other didn't really see that there was a lot of value in this? How do you deal with that?
So pretty easily because I don't have to prove anything. I let the substances do their job. So whenever I'm doing any kind of education, one of the most like significant factors about any given individual essential oil is that they are made up of between 50 and 300 chemical components. One essential oil can have between 50 and 300 chemical components. So those chemical components can impact so many different aspects of our bodies. It is like mind blowing. When I first got my initial program and the first 300 pages were organic chemistry, I was like, ew, like who wants to read that? I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to read that stuff. I want like, what does lavender do? You know, like I kind of want to know what I want to get to the part where it helps people. How do I get to that part? But it was fascinating to me to see some of that scientific information and read more about how it lands in the body so that I could answer some of those questions of my clients. One of my favorite stories is my own father-in-law, who is a retired anesthesiologist. And so his motto for years has been better living through chemistry, right? He's an anesthesiologist. He knows his chemistry. But these are also chemicals, you know, they have chemical components to them, but they're natural. And so he had this little fungus under his toenail that he just couldn't get rid of. And he had prescribed himself all these different things. And, you know, and so he's talking to me about it one day. And I said, well, how do you feel about spending $11 and buying some tea tree oil from me? And he's like, I don't know. But he did it. And 3 days later, no fungus under his toenail. So he was sold. He's like, man, your crap really works, you know? So
Yeah, sometimes those anesthesiologists can be kind of a pain in the neck, literally. So as we continue kind of talking about this, we're gonna take a little bit of break for just a second. But what we really want to hear about is in when we come back in a few minutes is so who are the patients that you like treating the most and who seems to get some of the best possible benefits, particularly those that have a pain issue. And we'll be right back in a few minutes to have you answer that and give us some further insight. All right. So we're back with Kris, who's from Ray of Light, and she is the founder, as well as both a massage therapist, aromatherapist, as well as an acupuncturist, too, to talk to us a little bit about aromatherapy during this talk and give us some insight. And one of the questions that really everyone has kind of on the tip of their tongue is, will it work for me? So, who are some of your best patients that you found some of the most success, particularly those patients that have a pain component?
so we definitely two different pathways where I address pain with essential oils and aromatherapy. The first one being topical. Of course, as a massage therapist, even when I started sort of playing with the essential oils, I'm going, oh, people who have inflammation, you know, patchouli, peppermint, you know, even lavender, some of those anti-inflammatory oils, like slather them on, put them on topically, which is very beneficial.
Wait a minute, you're getting
Yeah,
too fancy for us.
I am.
So yeah, you are. So what are the anti-inflammatory oils? You're just like running stuff off, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. So it sounds like there's certain oils that fit into certain classes.
Yes,
Why
there
don't you tell us what those oils might be?
so it depends on how deep you want to get into this. So there, I
Keep
mean,
it easy for us. Keep us on the 3 foot side. Don't take us to the 6 or 8 feet just yet.
okay, so the basics are there are basically I think of this as like when you're cooking. There's your meat and veg, and then there's your herbs and spices, right? There's sort of base notes, mid notes, and top notes. Okay. And the top note oils tend to be more impactful for acute situations. So let's say you stub your toe and you've got a sense of pain, right? And so you would use a top note, like peppermint is actually a top or middle note, depending on who you're talking to. And then the middle notes are more balancing. So when you have longer term inflammation, you want to use something like spearmint, that's a mid note, peppermint, that's can be either one. And then you have your base note, and that's for more chronic situations. So that is where we would look at something like ginger. We would look at frankincense. Some of those oils that have kind of a heavier viscosity to them, heavier weight to them, help with more chronic conditions. So topically, definitely applying essential oils, the right oils in the right dilution rates, which we can get into, but that's even more information, can definitely help with things like inflammation, with nerve pain, with muscle pain. And we actually have several oils that help with like arthritic type of pain. And we make some of those end user products so you don't have to think about the dilution rates. But then there's the other piece that I think is more of the aroma part that really came to me through my education, becoming a clinical aromatherapist, which was the impact on the brain with inhalation. And that part has been really sort of challenging to me in some ways, because as a massage therapist, I want to slather everybody with oil, but recognizing the power of that direct connection to the brain through the olfactory system it was life changing for me, honestly. Like, it was really incredible. And so I've been able to work with people who have more of that pain spike experience, and then they will do some inhalation and it sort of brings it down so that they can even receive the massage or, the acupuncture with a little bit less pain in that moment. And then also not that it's pain related, but we do help a lot of people with anxiety and stress with essential oils.
So hearing this, it sounds like you can deal with pain that's not only kind of that constant pain, but sometimes when it kind of goes up and down, there might be different therapeutic treatment options that you use as well. Is it mostly all the therapeutic options mainly olfactory, meaning you're smelling it? Are there other options that you might have available too?
It's so primarily, there's basically three main ways to use essential oils. The first one being inhalation, and so I use direct inhalation, and of course, a lot of people like to diffuse them, in their house or in their office, which is another wonderful way. That's part of the inhalation. Then there's the topical, which requires some dilution knowledge, so understanding so you don't put too much essential oil in to irritate your skin. And then some people use essential oils internally. That is something that I discourage from the average everyday user, unless they are connected with a clinical aromatherapist or a physician that's aware of the impact of essential oils, because it can really kind of cause harm in the body and interact with meds and things like that. So definitely you want to be careful with that. So most people are going to use them topically, or do the direct inhalation, or diffuse it.
Okay, so I'm hearing this, and particularly as a guy, it made me think back to shop class, where it sounds like you can get into some trouble if you don't know what you're doing. So
Yes.
there are some challenges that can happen if you don't know how to dilute it or if you're taking it inappropriately. Is that right? Can you tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that?
Yes. And I also wanted to sort of spin back and mention the emotional component of the pain, and especially chronic pain. So in that same sort of stress and anxiety aspect, essential oils can be very, very powerful for people who are in chronic, conditions. We currently treat a young boy who's 11 who has inoperable brain cancer, and he has various issues that we help him with aromatherapy, and have actually expanded our brand with some of the things that we've used with him because they've been so effective. So I wanted to just mention that emotional pain aspect. I think that's important to mention. So in terms of safety, so as a massage therapist, I really did not know what I was doing when I first started, and I was just going, putting however many drops smelled good at the time, and slathering them on. And so when I got this original program, and started working through it, I thought, oh man, people really, the market is wide open. There is no regulation of essential oils in the United States. And so there's not FDA approval. There's no one sort of watching over that market. And so, you really do have to be careful about knowing what you're getting in the bottle and then knowing how to use it properly. There are some oils, whenever anybody asks me, where do I start? We do have a starter pack that we sell, but ultimately the first one that I feel like everyone should have in their toolkit is lavender. It is the mother oil. It actually has been shown in research studies to improve or increase the effectiveness of any other oil that it is mixed with. And it is one of the few oils that primarily is safe to use directly on the skin neat. So bug bites, scrapes, oh, yes.
I got a question real quick.
Okay.
So I'm curious because I'm sure there are some patients who are going to say, well, will this potentially interact with any of my medications that I might be on? Because obviously I don't want to have any issues on that end. Do we know anything about any of those things? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So the answer is yes. There are some that can interact with medications, and especially when you're preparing for surgery, there are some that actually reduce the body's response to anesthesia. And so you definitely do not want to be messing around with some of those before you go into surgery. So it's important for you to do your research. And when you're doing that research, you want to kind of stay away from just the sort of, stay-at-home mom who decided to start a blog about essential oils. You want to make sure that the person that you're reading or that the book that you're reading is written by someone who actually has an education. My education ended up being almost 700 hours of education over 5 years that I took for this. So it's definitely important to understand that.
You are really politically correct with the way that you expressed that. But I appreciate that. I think a lot of our viewers and watchers may not necessarily know because I know I certainly didn't know, but they might be smarter than me about the elements of aromatherapy and how involved it might be. So let me ask you this: what do you think is the number one myth of about aromatherapy, and how would you go about debunking that?
Hmm. That one brand is better than the other. I think that's one of the things that I come across a lot. People ask me that a lot, well, what brand do you use? And of course, now it's easy because I can just say my own. But the reason I started my own brand was because there was all this, I start looking in the market and realizing there's not a place for me to go to say, okay, I absolutely know 100% what's in the bottle. So now I work with a company who has been in business for over 100 years. They are local here in South Bend, and they have relationships with farmers all over the world. They help promote, like, even like economically, the fair trade oils, and they want to promote the farmers. They want to promote proper practices in growing the crop and harvesting them and things. So it became important to me to know what brand to choose, but understanding that just because something says it's 100% pure, it doesn't actually mean that that's essential oil. It may not be fully dilute, or it may be diluted. It may be, a lot of times for lavender, they sell lavandin, which is very close chemically, but it is not the same thing. You do not get the same therapeutic benefit, but it's a lot cheaper. So you can buy it for $4, And so I think a lot of times people go to the supermarket and they go, oh, hey, I can buy this orange oil for, $2.50. But what they don't understand is that may not be actually orange oil. It may be a fragrance, but it says essential oil anyway.
And there's a huge difference in terms of its therapeutic efficacy, is what I'm gathering is the case. Is that right?
100%. And so our supplier, when we made our original, when I went over there and met with them originally, it's like, look, I'm not in this for fragrances. I'm in this for the therapeutic impact on the body. And so there's lots of really great brands out there. I'm not even a brand snob saying you have to only buy my oils. In fact, I host, education nights, and some people will bring different branded oils in because they just don't know what to do with them. And, and so I'll help them kind of understand, okay, you could use this in these different kinds of ways. But it is important to understand what you're buying. One of the ways to know that is if there's actually botanical names on the bottle. That is one of the biggest things to know, that it's truly that. Yes.
So you mentioned that you help people pick, what's really true. And I think that's a huge thing. When do you do that? And do you do that in person, or are you doing that via Zoom? Can you give us an idea about that? And we have a question coming in from the audience that I want them to know before they get after me and say, hey, ask my question. I'm going to ask their question in just a second, but I want to get my question in first. And
Yeah.
so I'm just curious whether you can kind of give us insight about that.
So yes, I can meet with people through Zoom for sure. And then I do a lot of work in the clinic, people actually coming in either for their massage or another service in here, or they'll just schedule to meet with me, especially if they have specific issues. So, I've worked with parents that have kids that, kind of have some ADHD stuff, and they wanted to do something more natural, or people have specific pain or specific imbalances in their body they want to address. So I can definitely do that. I like to do that in person because I have all the oils, and I want them to inhale it and see how their body responds to it. But we can certainly figure out how to do some of that through Zoom as well. And then I also do teach classes. I've taken a little hiatus because I'm in acupuncture school. So I've been taking a little bit of time off from classes, but I do offer that periodically.
Okay. So one of the questions that's coming in is one of our viewers who's always gracious, who's a phenomenal nurse. And one of the things that she asked is it safe around animals?
That is a great question that I get all the time. And primarily with dogs, most of the essential oils are safe. Again, you would have to follow the same rules in terms of dilution if you're going to put essential oils on your pet. But with cats, there are a lot of the essential oil classes are toxic to cats. They actually are missing a liver enzyme that helps break it down in the body. And so I definitely encourage anyone who has a cat. There is a website that is myoilyvet.com, and I really appreciate her. She actually has her own line of essential oils, and I encourage people to go there and talk with her if they want to use essential oils with their animals. If you have a cat at home, and most people like to diffuse oils, I encourage you to not diffuse them in areas where the cat is spending a significant amount of time, especially around their food, and then watch their behavior. So diffuse for an hour at a time. And if the cat's behavior is normal, probably you're fine. Obviously, if things start to go awry, then that would not be one you would want to use in the future with that cat. And definitely not let the cat lick anything off of your skin. So if you have, your wonderful essential oil blend that you love to make for yourself on your arms, and the cat's snuggling with you and starts to lick, that is definitely a way for a cat to experience toxicity with essential oils. So that's a great question.
Okay, so we have another question coming in, and that question is the following. And I know I'm going to mess this up, but is the local company Libermus? Is that how you say it? All right, maybe you can help me out and not be quite as bad as what I actually am.
Yes, it is Libermuth. So they have been in business over 100 years. And they are the spearmint behind Wrigley Gum. And so I love their origination story, and they are still family owned. I think this is the fourth generation that's in charge now, and so we have an excellent relationship with them. Their oils are not the least expensive on the market, but I appreciate the relationship that they have directly with the farmers, and their purity standards for sure. They're tested twice before I ever get them, and I get the reports, so I actually know what's in my bottles that I'm putting on my shelf.
Okay, I think this might be the reference that you gave to us in reference to essential oils for animals, in regards to oily vet, perhaps.
Mm,
Maybe you can kind of confirm or deny, but this way people can find out what's a good essential oil for their
yeah,
cat or other things along that line. So that way they can make a determination what's going to be a good fit for their home so that we can make
absolutely.
some determination about that.
Yes, that looks great.
Okay. So one of the questions that I really think many people have is what do you think is the best indication for people that have pain? When should they really? Is this more for headaches? Is it more for body aches? What do you think is the best treatment in utilizing aromatherapy?
Well, I personally like topical usage for body pain, because you can put it right on where you hurt, and there's a little bit more of a direct line to those tissues, the muscles and the nerves in that area where you're really hurting. And then there's nothing wrong with, once you spread that on your body, with actually inhaling it a little bit even from your hands to get that going to the brain. That being said, definitely headache pain. If it's like tension related, we have some rollers. We have a blend that's called "It's All in Your Head" headache relief, which was actually, that formula came from the story that I told earlier, with that patient that had migraines. But then there's also headache pain that is more migraine related, maybe more hormonal related, and so we have different blends for different purposes depending on what that pain is. But I personally, depending on the person, I tend to myself, I rub that on topically and then inhale it, but people with headaches may end up wanting to go directly to the inhalation. And inhalation should be done. I just use a little tissue that I fold up. Sometimes I use a little cosmetic square, that's cotton, and a few drops on there. And then I take 4 or 5 deep breaths. I do not do direct inhalation for longer than 5 minutes at a time, because your brain becomes sensitized to the essential oils, and so there's only so many times in a row that key and lock system is going to work, and so you start to get diminishing returns. So you want to use it for about 5 minutes and then give yourself a break and see where your pain level is.
Okay. So what do you wish you had known when you first started out, when you started dealing with essential oils and aromatherapy?
I wish that I would have paid attention more to the inhalation, the benefits of inhalation earlier on, because I really was just, um, I don't know what's happening to my phone. Sorry. I really was very distracted by, putting it on people topically and didn't know as much. And so the inhalation piece is really, really powerful. And one of the why I do this on a Kleenex and not just right out of the bottle, the essential oils are extremely volatile, so you'll find them in dark bottles. You want to kind of keep them out of the sun, and so when you open the bottle, every time you open that bottle, all the delicious goodness is coming out. And so you want to put a few drops on and put that cap back on, and just enjoy off the tissue. So the inhalation has become kind of my favorite application of essential oils.
Okay. And so, what are some of the unique skills that you feel like have really helped you be able to connect with people and help them understand this therapy as an option that may be able to help them?
I've been thinking about this question because I knew it was coming. I feel like I have spent a lot of time developing my intuition as a practitioner. And it has been really fascinating to me to be working with someone in a massage setting, and I'm halfway through and I've already kind of been in contact with their body, and it's like, oh, this person needs ginger. I'm not even sure why, but they do. And maybe they need a little bergamot, and I'm going to put some cinnamon in there, and I just sort of let myself almost chef it up, and thank God I have clients that just let me do whatever I want. And almost every time when I leave that session and I'm curious, going, okay, why did I pick that oil? And I look it up. And it may be like at the very end of the long list of what that particular oil does, but it was exactly what that person needed at that time. And I definitely document what I use, so because a lot of times people come back and say, "Oh my God, that thing whatever you put on me last time smelled amazing. I love that. It felt so good." And so I feel like my intuition and my ability and willingness to say, "Hey, I don't know everything. There is no way for me to keep all of the data about essential oils, their contraindications, their benefits and usage." I mean, of course, there are my favorites for different things, but there's no way for me to keep that all in my head. And so my ability and willingness to say, "Hey, you know what? Let me go look. Let me check into this really quick. Let me come up with a blend that we can try and we can tweak it." Combined with that intuition, I think that's really allowed me to be a powerful tool for people to use.
Kris, I gotta tell you, the questions are coming in fast and furious, and you kind of got me a little jealous
Oh
because
no.
normally I do a live stream every once in a while on my own, and people are like, meh. But for you, they are just coming in. But I'm going to make them wait for 1 second because I have my own question before they get their question again. And in mentioning that, I know you talked about the one headache patient, but
Mhm.
can you tell us about a patient that touched your heart with how they responded to your treatment and helped change your practice of what you do going forward?
So I don't know how to pick one. I have so many stories. I would say I'm going to pick one that's a little less close to my heart, so I don't cry. So there was a parent there.
Hold on a
It was
minute. We're okay with crying. If you want
oh,
to cry, it's okay. You got a tissue already there. So it's okay. If you're going to cry, we will cry with you. Go for it.
so I well, the one closest to my heart is my mom. She passed away from metastatic breast cancer in 2016, and she was such a huge advocate for anything I was doing. She always wanted to do, whatever I suggested. And so a lot of our blends came from my mom's needs throughout her different aspects of treatment. And literally on her deathbed, she said to me, even though they didn't save my life, they made my life so much better. And I love everything you did with them. So that one definitely is, deep in my heart.
Thank you for feeling comfortable sharing that with us. I mean, I think quality of life is a huge thing that we as clinicians really need to pay more attention to. It's not just about that immediacy of what you are able to do in the moment, but how you're able to impact someone's life. And that's huge.
Mhm. Especially when it's your own mom. And the other one is our little boy, our 11-year-old, that we've done so much with him and for him. He has various conditions, and is on rigorous chemo. That's, it's all experimental because everything, he has, totally inoperable brain cancer, and he has suffered so much. And so the fact that we have a few blends that are his favorites that he has in his roller bottle kit, and he goes in for his MRI and he's slathering himself with our relax blend to keep himself calm during the MRI. He goes in for chemo, and he knows he's going to have an upset stomach, and so he rubs his happy tummy on his belly. It's those are tools that have allowed for him to go back to school a little bit, to have a little bit of normalcy, without being that kid that needs, his bag of meds. He gets to just smell good, and it is also something that helps, keep his nausea down so that he can still have lunch at school.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions that we have is the following, and I'm not sure the full element is there, but I'll see what I can do about reading it. So inhalation for back pain. Is there a topical for back pain? Is it only inhalation? Does inhalation really work? Can you give us some ideas and some insights about that?
Mhm. So depending on the root of the pain, because there are many different types of pain. And so if it's more of a muscular type of pain, then I would maybe go for, and it's kind of I know people in chronic pain don't think that experimenting with themselves is necessarily fun. They just want to find something that's going to make the pain stop. But it would be interesting to try some different ones inhalation wise and see how much does that tick your pain down versus applying that topically. So there are so many oils that are anti-inflammatory and can be pain relieving. One of my very favorites topically for pain is frankincense and patchouli. Those two, excellent anti-inflammatory. The frankincense is a essential nervous system tonic. So if the body is sort of overreacting, it will help reduce and settle. And if it is reacting because there's an aspect that's weakened, it would help stimulate. And so those two, diluted properly and applied topically, are really powerful pain relievers. Peppermint is another one. Any of the mint are anti-inflammatory.
So when you talk about that, are there a proper mixture? I mean, of how you would want to kind of have that? Because I could easily imagine, particularly some guys that are like, I don't know anything about this essential. We'll do a 50-50 split and bada bing, bada boom, we're good to go and see how it works out. And that may not be the way of going about doing it, I'm gathering.
So I'm going to shamelessly plug our product line now. So this is the product that we have created. Ultraviolet is the name of the blend. This is specifically our cream. It kind of goes on like a body butter. This contains an essential oil blend that it's quite a few oils. It contains things like helichrysum, which helichrysum and frankincense also have been known to stimulate cellular regeneration. So I know, Dr. Landrum, you're going to like those too. And so this particular product is designed exactly for this. It's a topical pain reliever, mostly for nerve or muscle-based pain. In general, when you're blending at home, the very top therapeutic level would be 10% dilution, which is very high, and I would not recommend that for a first-time user. Usually you want to keep your blends at a 1 to 5% dilution rate for essential oils. So an example of that would be 2 ounces of a carrier oil, and you would use between 10 and 25 drops total of your essential oil blend. So if you're going to blend different oils together, you want to blend the essential oils first in a glass container if you can, and sort of let them synergize, because there is an actual synergy that happens with essential oils when they are blended together. So you want to do that first and then add your carrier.
Okay, that sounded kind of complex with some math that we're doing and some chemistry and some distilling and all right, but you didn't mention a Bunsen burner and a flask, so we might be okay. So okay, fair enough. Um, one of the questions that I guess I would ask is, so for people that are trying to find more information about this, what are some of the best resources, either in kind of traditional paperback, online, or in person, or virtually, that might be able to help them make heads and tails of this?
So unfortunately, my husband has my favorite book of all time downstairs at the office. So it is by the last name of the author is Werwood. That is one of my favorite essential oil books. Dr. Oz actually has an essential oil book out on the market as well. The one thing I would say in terms of buying a book and just sort of reading that yourself is that, like I said before, there's a lot of information on the market about internal use. And so even in some of those books, they talk about how to use them internally. And I just want to reiterate and caution people, if you're on medication, if you have significant health issues, don't just start putting these things in your water in the morning without talking with somebody that knows what's going on with you, because that's really, really important to me. In terms of resources, there is I am a National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy member, and that website is incredibly helpful even for the layperson. So it is NAHA, NAHA.org. They are the sort of self-proclaimed governing body for aromatherapy education in the United States. Valerie Ann Werwood is the author of the complete book of essential oils and aromatherapy. Can you see that? We love this book. That is my favorite. I bought that when I was back in massage school, and I have been using it. I mean, it's probably falling apart by now.
Hey, can I help a little bit with that if that's okay?
Yeah, I would love
All right.
that.
Let's see if maybe I can kind of give some references and you can tell me yes or no if that's going to be a
Okay,
fit. All right.
I love this game.
All right. Is this maybe the or a close component
Yes,
of what the book is that you were talking about before
that is
with the
the one.
author that you made mention of?
Yes,
And let's
there is
see.
there's a recipe in that book for the best dry cough remedy ever.
Oh, really?
Yes. So those anybody that's suffering with COVID that has that nasty hacking dry cough, it's amazing.
Okay. And then I think you made reference to this site, perhaps,
Yes.
which is, as you stated, the National Association for Holistic Aromatherapy that might be able to provide some value to people as well. Is that
Yes.
correct?
And there's plenty of there are tons of even sort of the layman's educational pieces that you can take a few courses here and there and really educate yourself just for your own use. I decided to go on and become a clinical aromatherapist mostly because of the clinic and and us developing the brand. And so I wanted to be sure that I had enough of that education that that we sort of have that behind us.
All right. So I got to tell you, Kris, as we start wrapping up, again, our viewers have shown that they're smarter and better than me. One of the things that they have posed the question of is the following. So, does she have a website? Referring specifically to you, obviously. And I wanted to know if you can be able to address that.
Yes, I do have a website. So we actually have two websites because last year we separated our companies a little bit. So Ray of Light, the clinic, and Soak Up the Light, the product line. And I will say that the Soak Up the Light product line website is still very much under construction. We are this year intending to go full e-commerce. So soakupthelight.net is our sort of landing page, and then you can learn more about our clinic services from there. You can go to soakupthelight.com, which is about our products, and then in you'll be able to click through in links there to actually shop for our products online. Hey, look at that! It's the Hocus Pocus place. Yes.
All right.
And on those websites is my email, which is the best way if you are not in the Michiana area and you don't necessarily need to connect with me personally in person here. Email is the very best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. So I know that you have more stories that I prevented us from getting to because I wasn't as efficient as an interviewer as what I would like to be, but I'm working on it. I guess the question I'd ask you is so, what did I neglect to ask you that you really would like to be able to answer so that our viewers know more about you, essential oils in general, and give some insight and some value for them so that they have understanding about this topic?
So where are we going? Where are we going with aromatherapy and essential oil usage? And so I will say that in France, the hospitals use lemon oil in their ventilation system because lemon oil is one of the best anti antibacterial, viral, fungal, and septic. So they have actually reduced the amount of sepsis in the hospitals by pumping lemon oil through their ventilation system. That is where we're going someday. In the meantime, at least at our clinic, we're going to continue developing our brand. We're going to continue educating the public about, these amazing, incredible substances. We're going to continue to have make and take experiences where you can come and make your own roller bottle, your own spray bottle. And eventually, once I get my license for acupuncture, I will actually be combining essential oils with the needles. And we are developing a roller bottle based aspect of our line that will be addressing the Chinese medicine imbalances. So if someone comes in for acupuncture for Chinese medicine and okay, you're spleen deficient and you're kidney indeficient, here's the blend you use and here's the points you roller it on. So we're going to be doing some aroma acupuncture along with aromatherapy massage. So my husband also just put a little note on my desk to make you ask me what my favorite oil is.
All right. So since you sent in notes, fine. What's your favorite oil then?
My very favorite oil is called spikenard, and it's actually kind of endangered. So we buy it. We hold it very dear to our hearts. It is actually in the Bible. It's referred to as nard oil. And it was one of the oils that was used by Mary Magdalene when she massaged Jesus's body with oils. It is phenomenal for grief, and it is losing my parents 14 months apart from each other and being their primary caregiver was a little soul shattering, honestly. And so I use that oil regularly during that time and since then. And we do have that in our bliss scent, which the bliss scent, it was made especially for my husband and I's wedding. That was our wedding favor, is that we made a special lotion called bliss, and that's actually going to be on sale next month, so you guys should watch that on our Facebook page. Shameless plug.
Okay. And again, if they want to seek you out
Mhm.
and they actually wanted to kind of visit you, not virtually, but in person, where would they?
We are on Bristol Street in Elkhart, right next to Dibley Chiropractic Center, 1715. There you go. We do also have a very busy Facebook page. We have two Facebook pages. One of them is for Ray of Light, the clinic, and one of them is for Soak Up the Light Essentials, the essential oil brand. So you could follow both of those. We do talk about our blends on there. My intention is to get more blog posts and some video content and education. So see, Dr. Landrum, you're inspiring me.
I think you're inspiring us. All right. Well, Kris, we really appreciate you joining us today. We thank you so much for your time, you sharing of yourself, particularly so many of the personal connections and how this really got you to impacting the community as a whole. And what we hope is maybe you could come back and talk to us about massage therapy as well and give us an idea about, is one massage the same as every other? Clearly, I can tell from your face, no.
No, it's not.
And so maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that in the context of pain. And we really do appreciate you joining us. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is Cutting Edge Pain Relief, and we really want to be able to make sure that you understand your options for pain relief, how we can be able to help you punch pain in the face and get back to leading your life. Please join us next Thursday for another talk about how to be able to deal with doing just that. Have a great day.